House. As official proceedings will shortly commence, now would be an opportune moment to check that your mobile phones are switched off or turned to silent. As the would you please be upstanding for the arrival of Her Excellency Professor the Honourable Margaret Gardner, Governor of Victoria.
Please be seated. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which Government House and its grounds sit, the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. Your Excellency, I invite you to present the honours and awards in the Order of Australia. To be officers in the General Division, Paul Anthony Briggs, for distinguished service to the Indigenous community, to social welfare through economic inclusion and reconciliation, and to sporting organisations. Professor Deli Chen, for distinguished service to sustainable agriculture, to Australia-China relations, to philanthropic endeavours, and as a mentor. Lisa Ann Fitzpatrick, for distinguished service to the nursing and midwifery professions through leadership and advocacy roles. To be members in the General Division, Francis Roger Aqua, for significant service to mental health care and to the community. Vivara Athensio Ianu, for significant service to the community, particularly through inclusion and diversity initiatives in a range of roles. Janine Barand, for significant service to the museum, arts and cultural sector. Associate Professor Felix Cornelius Bien, for significant service to medicine, particularly reconstructive surgery. Dr. Matthew William Butlin, for significant service to economic and social research and to public policy. Douglas Scott Chapman, for significant service to the community of Victoria through a range of governance roles. Dr. Sandra Elaine Close, for significant service to the mining and resources sector and to women as an equal opportunity pioneer and advocate, and to professional associations. Professor Kim Cornish, for significant service to tertiary education, to psychological science, and to the community. Joanne Charlotte Crawford, for significant service to women's rights, to gender equality, and to international development. Anastasia Duraz, for significant service to community health, particularly to ill children and their families. Peter Ian Juris, for significant service to sports physiotherapy and to the community. Margaret Leonie Edmond, for significant service to architecture, to tertiary education, and to professional organisations. Associate Professor Nyari Joy Elwood, for significant service to medicine, particularly through stem cell research. The late Sylvia Farram, to be received by her niece, Christine Farram, in recognition of her significant service to cricket administration and to hockey. John Gregory Foreman, for significant service to the performing arts, particularly music, and to the community. Penelope Ann Fowler, for significant service to the community through a range of organisations. Dr. Jane Graham Fox, for significant service to medicine, particularly as a breast surgeon, researcher, and educator. Dr. Peter Rex Harcourt, for significant service to sports and exercise medicine and to anti-doping monitoring. Kristen Mary Stegley for significant service to heritage advocacy and to the community. Sarah Stegley for significant service to the community through a range of organisations. To receive the Conspicuous Service Cross, Colonel John Angus Dougal for outstanding achievement as the Director Business Intelligence, Army Headquarters. Colonel Rodney Valdemar Peterson for outstanding devotion to duty as Staff Officer Class 1, Military Employment Classification and Review Service, Joint Health Command. To receive the Public Service Medal, Bree Bolst, for outstanding public service and leadership in response to COVID-19. Rex Berwick Candy, for outstanding public service in waterway management. Nicholas Patrick Carbines, for outstanding public service in the provision of payments and supporting those most vulnerable and experiencing homelessness across inner city Melbourne. Dr. Emma Cassar, for outstanding public service and leadership in Victoria's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Christine Howlett, for outstanding public service in preventing social harm and exceptional contribution to public sector integrity. Heather Joan McAllister, for outstanding public service to public education. Trudy Marie Nagel, for outstanding public service to public education. David Pringle, for outstanding public service to the Federal Circuit and Family Court of Australia through innovative leadership and vision. Kelly Marie Stanton, for outstanding public service in the area of family violence and pioneering world-leading reforms to improve the lives of victim survivors. To receive the Medal of the Order of Australia in the General Division, Michael John Aitken, for service to optometry. Barbara Cecilia Alderton, for service to the community through a range of roles. Angela Altair, for service to the community and to local government. Geraldine Joy Anderson, for service to vocational education. Maya Avdibegovic, for service to the community through social welfare organisations. Heather Lorraine Barry, for service to the communities of Cobram and Moira. Dr. Joan Benjamin, for service to tertiary education. Mary Kay Blackburn, for service to the community of Ararat. John Stephen Bly, for service to Australian rules football. Connie Boglis, for service to mental health reform, to veterans and to the community. Jeffrey Stewart Bransbury, for service to the community of Beaumaris. Paul Brophy, for service to aged welfare and to the community. Rosalind Bryant, for service to the community through a range of roles. Wayne Jeffrey Butner, for service to the print media and to the community. Mervyn Allen Khan, for service to the community through a range of organisations. Shirley Ann Khan, for service to the community through a range of roles. Heather Ruth Carr, for service to athletics. Eric Charles Chaplin, for service to veterans and to the community. Jeanette Leanne Child, for service to community health. James Andrew Clavin, for service to veterans and to community history. Lois Evelyn Congram, for service to veterans and their families and to the community. Michael Francis Cooper, for service to community sport. Leon Francis Costamans, for service to conservation and the environment. Claire Frances Cotter, for service to people with disability. John Graham Craig, for service to cricket. Raymond Cronin, for service to aviation. Patrick Dalton, for service to the law and to the community. Professor Barbara de Courten, for service to medical research and to healthcare. Mihiri Disanayaka for service to the Sri Lankan community of Victoria. Elias Dufas for service to the Greek community of Victoria. The late Peter Raymond Dowling to be received by his grandson, Ted Hines, in recognition of his service to primary industry. Rosemarie Draper for service to the community through social welfare organisations. Vivian Jean Drew for service to gliding. Dr. Vivian Elton for service to psychiatry and the community. Alan Douglas Evers Buckland for service to the community through a range of roles. Vincent John Feeney for service to secondary education. Dr. Barry Charles Fitzgerald for service to the community of Buninyong. Christine Lempick Fitzherbert for service to the community through a range of organisations. Gary Fowler for service to the community through a range of organisations. Lynette Edith Franklin for service to the community in a range of roles. Gay Gadsden for service to conservation and the environment. Jacqueline Gay Galloway for service to the community through social welfare organisations. Sally Gamble for service to education and the community. Leslie Pamela Gaspar, for service to the Jewish community of Victoria. Peter Stephen Gaspar, for service to the Jewish community of Victoria. Glenys Annette Gafer, for service to the community through charitable initiatives. Professor Michelle Giles, for service to medicine. Lenise Elizabeth Goldie, for service to veterans and their families. Dr. David Angus Goldsmith, for service to dentistry and to the community. Dr. Margaret Grigg, for service to mental health through a range of roles. Merinda Harrison Drake, for service to Indigenous health in Gippsland. Janet Mary Inkle, for service to conservation and the environment. Emma King, for service to the community through social welfare organisations. Neil Kinsey, for service to the community and to music. Please join Her Excellency in congratulating all today's recipients. Your Excellency, I now invite you to address us.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jeremy Moole, Secretary, Department of Premier and Cabinet. Bridget Monagle, Commissioner, Victorian Public Sector Commission. Boy Thay, Deputy Chairperson, representing Vivian Nguyen, Chairperson of the Victorian Multicultural Commission. Brigadier Simon Welsh, representing Major General Jason Blaine, Senior Army Officer of Victoria. Trevor Clark, Deputy Chair, the Order of Australia Association Victoria Branch, and the many distinguished guests who are in the audience with us today. apart from, of course, the very many distinguished people who have just been recognised. Let me begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the unceded lands of the people of the Eastern Kulin Nations, the Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung peoples, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and recognise any other elders who are with us today, which I know there are in the audience. It is a pleasure to welcome all of you to Government House. This is one of the times of the year that is wonderfully marked by this celebration of people of Victoria who have been contributing so wonderfully to their community. Order of Australia Investitures have been held in this historic ballroom, which is much older than them, since the introduction of the Australian Honours System in 1975. Recipients have been recognised for their work in charities, in sport, in research, religious communities, creative arts, education, health, many areas, and you've just heard the many areas as we've read out the citations this morning. In the face of such a long history of awards, it's unusual for those being recognised to represent some different part of the community. But communities change, and so do those who are honoured by our system. This is only the second time in the Order's history that more than 50% of those honoured in this set of investitures are women. There is much more diversity among those honoured today than there was in 1975. The community has changed, but I think it's taken some time for the community to catch up with how much it has changed, and it is wonderful to see that we are indeed doing so. In 1975, Phyllis Gratian was one of the first Victorian women to receive an AM for her service to social welfare. She'd done significant work in Victoria's blind community, establishing the Lady Nell Seeing Eye Dogs School and Rehabilitation Centre, which is now known today as Seeing Eye Dogs Australia. And many Victorian women have followed in her footsteps. In 2001, Dr. Gabrielle Medley was recognised for service to medicine and women's health through the Victorian Cytology Service. She escaped Nazi persecution as a child, became medical director of the Victorian Cytology Service, and oversaw the introduction of the Australian Cervical Screening Program, a program that's now credited with halving the mortality rate among cervical cancer patients since 1991. And in 2023, we recognised Antoinette Braybrook for significant service to the law and to family violence prevention. A Kuku-Yalanji woman, Braybrook is the co-founding member and chief executive officer of JIRA, an Aboriginal community-controlled organisation that provides legal services and support to First Peoples affected by family violence. They're three women that show the diversity of the fields in which women have been recognised, but you heard today the diversity of fields that we recognise that make a significant difference to our community, and it is important that we recognise the work that is done by so many across our community. It's important we recognise the work around us because we take often too little time to celebrate what people have done. We celebrate the moment, but there's something different about celebrating the length of the contribution, which is what is happening here. This is not the moment of contribution, but the recognition, usually of a significant lifetime of contribution in many different ways. And it can be that many achievements go unnoticed at the time or uncelebrated, and it takes us a bit of time to stop and to reflect. And it is good that we do so because it reminds us of what is worthwhile and valuable in what we do for and with one another. We might have hoped it took less than half a century for the number of women being honoured to reflect our population. Nevertheless, it does show that this year's Australia Day honours that there are more than enough Victorian women making an impact in our state to be recognised alongside the men who are making an impact in this state. That tells us that it took so much time, it depends on us nominating people. And that requires us to look out into our community and to recognise those who are contributing, irrespective of gender, religion, creed. We need to look to the contribution and to make sure it is recognised. And we don't do that unless we nominate people. And that is a very, very important thing to do, not just for recognising their contribution, but for us saying something to ourselves about what we value. And we remind ourselves in these ceremonies about why we value those contributions. So today's recipients remind us that people from all walks of life create change and make great contributions in our community. And indeed, the Australian honours system, and it is an Australian honours system, should represent all parts of our community. It should represent all of Australia. So let me urge you again that those of you who have been honoured might think about who else you might nominate, and those who are sitting here celebrating their friends and family who've been recognised might think what you can do in this system, because it is a system in which we create and recognise the contribution to our community. Congratulations to all of you receiving an award today. It is actually a humbling experience to listen to what is said, and sometimes very truncated. You know, you hear many organisations. That means the person has been active in a lifetime, usually over so many organisations that they can't write them all down on one piece of paper. They're very big things that have been done here and recognised today. So very warm congratulations. I look forward to what all of you will do next. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. If you are able to do so, would you please now stand and join in the singing of the first verse of the Australian National Anthem and remain standing for the departure of the Governor. Thank you.
That concludes official proceedings for today. The State Apartments will now be open for viewing. On behalf of the Governor, I invite you to stay and to enjoy the hospitality of Government House. Thank you.